Species.
Hello and welcome to Season 5, Episode 134 of Origin of Species, the show where we talk about words, phrases, and all sorts of other stuff. As always, I'm here with my good friend Steve, and I am rocking my hashtag loaded for bear shirt that I just got today. And I just wanted to say, and Steve, poor Steve, always tries to, oh, there, is that I love the cut of jib?
That is. I decided to sport your idiom tonight. So I have I love the cut of your jib. And if you're interested in purchasing one, check out the link right in my name, species.com/store.
Well, and I was going to say, I big props to Steve for coming up with all of these designs. They are actually doing well. We're selling merch, which is really cool.
Yeah.
You know, there's always that fear you're going to put stuff out there and then it's never going to get bought. But thank you all for supporting, and big props to Steve for putting the store together and all that. So, okay, the one we're going to do today, the first one we're going to do, I've got actually 3 idioms to do today, and then Steve has a new slang.
Oh, yeah.
We've got a word from one of our contributors. We've got a lot of stuff going on today, and I'm really excited about this show. So let's get into the first one, which is to be on your P's and Q's, or to mind your P's and Q's.
P's and Q's.
Yeah. So I remember specifically like where I was when I heard this for the first time, which is somewhat rare, but there are certain things that you hear, you know, growing up that you stick in your mind. Well, the first time I recall hearing this was when I think I played football for like a very brief time because I broke my wrist almost immediately, which is a whole other story, where for years my mom wouldn't let me play football. And finally in 10th grade, I just wore her down along with the football coach. They said yes. And on 2-a-days, like the first week, I broke my radius of my wrist in practice, like a really bad break. So it was kind of like, you know, she's like, oh, well, that's why I didn't want you playing football. But anyway, we had this football coach he was the line coach, and I was playing line, and he would yell at us, you got to be on your P's and Q's. I mean, I'm not going to yell into the mic here, but he would scream, you got to be on your P's and Q's. And again, you just pick up from context. I'm like, well, I guess that means I need to be on the top of my game. I need to pay attention to the details. We need to pay attention to the details. And that's sort of what I took it to mean. I don't know that I've ever used it, maybe a couple times here and there, but I had no clue why P's and Q's. What in the world are P's and Q's? So I'd be curious to see if you used this one, or if you had a football coach that yelled at you. Or...
I'm familiar with it. I appreciate that you even entertained the idea that I'd be involved with a football team and a coach in any capacity other than poorly bringing water to real athletes. I've heard that before, but generally I think it's been used in terms of etiquette. Like make sure you're on your manners, mind your P's and Q's. You know, you're going to be in a more formal situation, show good manners. Almost sounds like one that I think I could see my mom telling me, and deservedly, based on that, as we've discussed earlier, most of my fine dining experiences were at a Red Lobster in high school. So it was good for her to remind me of those things in certain formal situations.
Yes, you don't want to be the one acting out at a Red Lobster.
No, you don't want all the etiquette snobs at Red Lobster to see that you didn't put your salad fork on the proper position on the table.
Right. So sure. So you're right. I mean, that is definitely something a mom would say to a kid. I think we have a stable of those that through the years we've said, okay, this is one that mom would say, like smart aleck was maybe the first one we talked about, a mom idiom. And this is, it was weird to show up on the football field, which is maybe why I was confused. But the definition, according to, well, this is a good one this is an interesting one because there are many different definitions, all in the same ballpark though.
Okay.
And I'll go ahead and tell you that there's a lot of confusion about the origin of this one. So I'm really excited to kind of cut through that here in the next few minutes. So Phrase Finder says that to mind your P's and Q's means be on your best behavior, be careful of your language. So there's another twist there with talking about language. And then dictionary.com said practice good manners, be precise and careful in one's behavior and speech. So again, it is manners. It is something your mom might say to you, maybe more so than a football coach, but excuse me, but it has also to do with speech. Okay. So I think that sort of informs some of these theories. So let's go through. There are a handful of theories. I don't know. Like, I don't know if you know where this comes from, but if you do know, don't give it away. But if you don't know, do you have a guess?
I keep, for some reason, wanting to say Love Boat, but that's just because I always have reasons to want to talk about the Love Boat. But I have a feeling that's not. This predates the Love Boat, I imagine. Well,
we'll see. I mean, it there may be some sailors involved. There often are, or nautical themes. Now, did it? I will go ahead and rule out that it did not come from the Love Boat.
Okay,
it quite predates the Love Boat. Let's go with the first one. I thought the first one on its face had some believability, just because it is what you might think it would mean. So the first theory of where did mind your P's and Q's or be on your P's and Q's came from was that the P's and Q's could stand for please and thank you. Now, please, obviously the P, and then the thank you, there's your Q.
Okay.
Yeah. So as much as it fits with the idea of having good manners, particularly in speech, but this explanation is just one that sort of sprung up as people trying to figure out what this possibly could mean, and you try to retrofit it, get used to that theme, because people have been trying to figure out for the longest time where this came from. And I could see you saying that, because you can sort of make that work, but that's certainly not where it came from. Now, this one I thought was interesting. The printing press. So printers back then, like typesetters, it would be very easy to make a mistake because of the way you're setting the type, and the P's and Q's could easily be put backwards. Right? So you could see the caution of telling, hey, mind your P's and Q's. Let's make sure. One reason why it's probably not that is this actually predates the printing press, but also why would they use, I mean, you could use P and Q, but you could also use B and D. There's a bunch of, it seems too specific.
Yeah.
But you could see it, right? I mean, maybe. Yeah. This next one you can't see. It's a total stretch, but it's everywhere. There were so many lovely articles to help me out with this. I guess I should mention some of them, but really that comes down to worldwide words. There was, oh, by the way, I was actually going to use Snopes, because I used to love Snopes, and then they became like this weird. Yeah. I don't know, like if some, Media Matters like bought Snopes or something.
Big orange guy got to him. Big mean orange guys warped a lot of people, and they've never gotten over it. I think they were among that group.
You're right, because they were coming out. I think what happened with Snopes is, and we talk about Snopes just because I used to love Snopes. I used to, when I was bored, I would just read through Snopes, but they did go nuts, and I think they wanted to become like the, fact checking has become this whole industry. I think they wanted to move into well, they always have been sort of the fact checking. I think they were like, we've got to debunk everything Donald Trump says or whatever, and it's like, okay. But now I don't go to your website as much because it's annoying. So I even went to the website and I was like, you know what? They have a big article on it. And then I got this pop-up and it was like, subscribe to our email list or something with all the misinformation. And I'm like, no, I don't trust you guys anymore. So,
well, we'll have new elections soon. And when President Yi runs again for 2024, maybe they'll have a chance to straighten themselves out.
Anyway, it's probably has nothing to do with this next one, but I'm going to throw it out there anyway, which is, which I found, by the way, not on, Snopes, but on every other article, which is that it could have to do with French dancers. Ooh. So French dancing masters, as apparently they were called, would admonish their students to tell them to pay attention to your, now this is just to where it doesn't make much sense to me, but it was PEDS, P-I-E-D-S, and Qs, which is like you're in a line, Qs. Okay. In French, those words mean foot and tail. And I guess they do refer to your PEDS and Qs maybe, but it's just a stretch. It's something that is in every one, and they're like, this is the first one to debunk. But it just shows you the lengths to which people try to come up with an explanation for being on your P's and Q's. So, you say, well, if you're not watching your feet and your tail, or I think tail actually, there were so many articles about this. I think at one point they were talking about it had to do with like the hair, your hair.
Okay.
But I don't know if it means your butt. It doesn't really matter though, because it has nothing to do with it. So you remember in I think it was our last episode, you sort of, I don't know, you called out some typos that were in your old English. Remember that?
That's right. It was a book that had been printed 40 years after the invention of the printing press.
Yeah. So if you can believe it, typos have been a bugaboo of the printing industry for some time, even before the printing press, back when scribes were translating and were sort of aggregating all the great Latin works in Greek as well. Well, they would abbreviate very often, right? So, imagine you have to write some Latin text,
right?
100 times. And a lot of times it was not so much for show. It was just that we need to get this on paper and get it over to somebody else so that they can have this translation. And so they came up with a lot of of little codes, and they'd use like symbols, hearts, stars, dots, dashes, things like that would stand for certain text apparently. And I don't know what all the ins and outs are, but the idea and that had been put out there, the theory of P's and Q's was that it was very important that they did not use the wrong abbreviation for P's and Q's, because the P's and the Q's were very ornate when they started. Now, see, again, this doesn't really, like, I'm giving what is out there in multiple places, but even as I say it, I'm like, this is so dumb. Because why are P's and Q's the most ornate letters? I don't think they are. I mean, this is what the article says, but it's quite a stretch.
Well, you could have queens, popes. You had some big hitters back then with P's and Q's.
That's true. President, ye or yay. So this one, again, doesn't work because the scribal codes weren't being used when this thing got popularized. So a lot of this is timing, and also just, again, on their face don't seem to pass muster. Have we done pass muster? I don't think we have. We did cut the mustard.
We did.
But we didn't do pass muster. Okay.
Or cut the cheese.
We didn't do cut the cheese either. That'll always make me laugh, by the way. Any toilet humor works for me. All right. I promise sailors, and sailors,
yes,
ye shall have. So this one was interesting. So mind your P. So one of the theories is that mind your P's and Q's means P. A P is another name for like, you've heard of a pea coat?
Yes.
So sailors had those like heavy wool jackets that were referred to as P's. Those were pea coats or pea jackets, and many times just P's. And then a Q was a name for a wig. So pea jackets, as I mentioned, short, rough woolen overcoats, commonly worn by sailors in the 18th century. And then I guess they were called paraquets was the full name for wigs worn by fashionable sailors or fashionable gentlemen. So the idea here is that you would tell your sailor, hey, mind your P's and Q's, which, as I was reading in these various articles, it was like, why would you choose those things? And the reason put forth by folks that say this very well could be the origin is essentially keep your greasy wig off your nice jacket. So mind your P's and Q's. So mind your jacket and wig.
Yeah. And that could come back to, we do a lot of new slang that comes from drag culture. There's a chance that might show up again, maybe in a different way.
I could see that, actually, now that you say that. I bet you that, yeah, I could see that. All right, I got one more.
Hit me.
And this one is the one that everyone loves the most.
Oh.
It ain't right, but I'll tell you. Which is English pubs and taverns from the 17th century. So bartenders would keep a watch on alcohol consumption by keeping a tally on a chalkboard of pints and quarts of beers as they were passed out. So it was either, hey, drunk guy, mind your P's and Q's. You already had, which by the way, I do like the idea of after a long, hard day coming in for a quart. It's one thing for a pint, but I looked it up because I'm real bad at these things. A quart is 32 ounces. Mm-hmm. So it's basically like, I think they make 32. I know they make 40s, but
they didn't have ye old 7-Eleven back then to buy them at.
Yeah. Ye old Colt 45. But anyway, so yeah, it could either be the bartender telling the patron, or it could be maybe the manager of the restaurant saying, hey, mind your P's and Q's, because, there's all ways this could be used in a bar, like quit writing P on the board when you gave them a Q. Yeah. I mean, I've watched enough Bar Rescue to know that bartenders, while a very noble profession, which I'm glad exists, yes, they're human like the rest of us, and are tempted to pocket a farthing or two.
Roadhouse has taught us that also.
That's right.
Amongst many other things.
That's right. So this one is one that I even found, by the way, I will vent a little bit,
please,
on something.
Let loose.
First of all, I want to say thank you to everyone. If you're listening to this, if you've bought me a book with like one of these guys, books with, idioms in them, because they are good to sort of get an idea as I'm looking for topics for the show. Steve has like this massive adult book. I have a lot of like these ones that are very easy to flip through, but they do this thing. I have 3 of them that I've gotten as gifts, and they all do the same thing where at the beginning they sort of make this little statement about, yeah, well, we don't always know the real answer, so you shouldn't take this as gospel or something like that. Yeah. But you have to kind of like be looking for it to like see that. Mm-hmm. And then they go through and they just put false etymologies, and it's maddening, because I've seen ones in these books that we've done that we've debunked, and it'll just sit there and say, gosh, what was the one I saw today? Just, it ticked me off. I don't remember which one it was, but it was one of the ones that, I believe it was cold shoulder, and it just gave the cold shoulder story. It was like when a guest would come and the owner of the house would, the would want them to leave. They'd give them a cold shoulder of meat. And it's like, not true, dude. But I get why, I guess, people write these things. They sell. I guess it's boring if you, which really, I guess, should make us question this whole podcast. But this is why I like to bring in false etymologies, because it's kind of fun to go, hey, next time somebody comes up to you and says, mind your P's and Q's, Hell House goes back to French dance. Mm-hmm. You can say, no. Do you not see my Loaded for Bear t-shirt? I listen to Origin of Species. Yeah. I know.
We do debunking and also bunking. All the bunkings we do.
You have to be bunked.
Bunking, yes.
Before you can be debunked. That's just math. So you're right. All right. So we've just run down 6, like probably totally false etymologies for P's and Q's, and then we're going to make it a little more confusing before we clear it all up. So there was actually a very similar phrase that sounds just the same that was even before we start getting records of being minding your P's and Q's. So this is now where I'm going to turn to Worldwide Words and Michael Quinion. And what I love, and I've said this before, I love when I'm just researching a topic and people start referring to like Barry Popick or Michael Quinion or something like that. Cause it's like, oh, that's my boy. And that's what happened with this. He's cited because I think he's the one that sort of has very articulately cut to the answer here. So there's a similar expression, dates back to 1612, P and Q, P-E-E, and K-E-W. It was 17th century slang, meaning highest quality. And we know that because of the context. So I read it. I won't bore you with the actual text because it is quite boring. But in 1612, the Oxford English Dictionary has a citation from someone named Roland's Knave of Hearts. And there's a couple references back then where somebody will say, hey, bring me this, and it better be, I want P and Q. And they don't know. A lot of people have said, well, the PQ actually stands for prime quality.
Mm-hmm.
And no, that's just folk etymology. And it would, and as Michael Quinion says, if it meant prime quality, it would just be PQ. You wouldn't say mind your P's and Q's. It doesn't, mind your primes and qualities doesn't really work. And that's just another after the fact sort of thing. So his understanding is that is completely separate from this other phrase that sprung up.
Mm-hmm.
And here's the answer, which is, I usually say, I had no idea what this was. When you hear the answer, this is what I thought of immediately, which is that it comes from just the alphabet, learning the alphabet. So we got a smoking gun here on this one. Because I was thinking about it, I was like, and I was just like, well, they come right one after the other in the alphabet. And I was like, I bet minding your P's and Q's just means minding your letters. It just means, attending to your studies, learning the alphabet, things like these, especially since it goes back so far. I feel like that would be something that would have to be, I mean, we still have to reinforce it now with our kids, but I can see that being it. So, and here's the smoking gun. So Michael Quinion says on Worldwide Words, investigations by the Oxford English Dictionary in 2007, when revising their entry, turned up early examples of the use of P's and Q's to mean learning the alphabet. The first, and I'll just leave you with this one, is a poem by Charles Churchill, published in 1763, which says, quote, on all occasions next the chair, he stands for service of the mayor and to instruct him how to use his A's and B's and P's and Q's. So I think the full thing was A's and B's and P's and Q's, and it just, and it's something, again, that when you hear it said, it kind of sticks with you, and it's something you can really chide kind of a kid with. Hey, now remember, mind your manners, mind your P's and Q's. So he came to the conclusion based on the Oxford English Dictionaries. He agrees with them that it is having to do with just learning the alphabet. So now minding your P's and Q's. You've been bunked and you've been debunked.
Get it coming and going. Well, that's refreshing. It makes sense. And I think it's really impressive that the OED isn't resting on their laurels. That they're still going through and checking on things as they go back and redo it. And hopefully they're not using Urban Dictionary. Or maybe they are. Who knows?
I thought I was going to look up Urban Dictionary for this one, and I was like, I can't do it. I'm not doing P's and Q's. You're just setting them up for... you're going to be rewarding bad behavior, which is what we do all the time by going there. But this is too much I'm just not going to do it. So in a minute, I'm going to give a sort of brief origin of a related phrase right after this.
Prison slang with Mindy the Dog. Hey guy, my name is Mindy the Dog. Here's some things to know about me. I am a beagle. I spent time at a dog rescue run at a prison. I ain't going back to prison. I look good. A few years ago, I was rescued by my best friend. My best friend is clearly the alpha of a pack. Like me, she looks good. Life with my best friend is good, even though her beta, Stuh Eve, or as I call him, the Honky Man, is the worst. Even though I hate him and wish he would die a long, violent death, he is not my biggest enemy. That would be Jolene, the hillbilly dog who lives down the street. Jolene moved to my neighborhood last year and immediately tried to start beef with me. Why? That's easy. I look good. Look at how good I look. Jolene is from Bump-Ass, Virginia. I've never been there, but I have been to prison, which made me think of fights in prison. Here's some prison slang about fighting in prison, courtesy of prison-diaries.com. Cut your eyes. Looking at someone or their belongings through the sides of one's eyes. Normally thought of as an intent to steal the items or start a fight. Someone cuts their eyes at me, I normally just stare them down like this. And if that doesn't work, forget the eyes, I just start cutting. Chin check, to punch an inmate in the jaw to see if he'll fight back. I like this one because it makes me think of the Honky Man and all of his chins, because he is a fat, disgusting pig. And finally, dinner and a show, when inmates eat in the chow hall and watch other inmates fight and get pepper sprayed by the guards. I like this one because it combines two of my favorite things: food, especially scrimps, and watching anyone that crosses me get what they deserve. You hear that, Jolene, you hillbilly? Hey guy, thank you for listening to Prison Slang. If you want to learn more about me and how good I look, you can find me on Instagram at Mindy the Dog. Watch, like, and subscribe to Origin of Species on YouTube. If you like this segment and want to support Origin of Species, go to patreon.com/Species. That's patreon.com/Species. I'm Mindy the Dog, and hey, my best friend, I want to get some scrimps. Let's go to Red Lobster.
All right, we're back. So we just did Mind Your P's and Q's, and when I was searching that one up on Worldwide Words, I happened to see, actually it was on todayifoundout.com, there was an article, and I had to just throw this one in there. It's Mind Your Beeswax. And that one's very close to my heart because it's one that my dad said all the time growing up. There, none of your beeswax, mind your beeswax. It was to the point where when I was a kid, I didn't think that was euphemistic. I don't know what I thought, but I thought mind your business. I thought mind your beeswax was just the saying, like the way, and I guess it is in a way, right? But I didn't even, I don't know. It was just so prevalent to the point where I remember, I have to tell this story, but there was my dad's side of the family, I was thinking about this today, had like my grandmother, my great-grandmother, my aunts and uncles, and my dad, very keen on like staying out of other people's business. That's something that has been a theme throughout life of like, they'll call each other on it, they'll call me on it. It's sort of this thing of like, well, just mind your, and I think that's a way of saying like, don't gossip or don't this, that, or the other. But it was a theme that came up a lot, which is why I heard Mind Your Beeswax a lot. But I will never forget back when I was probably like 6 or 7, because my great grandmother was still alive. We called her Momo. And then my grandmother, this is on my dad's side, was Mimey and Momo. Okay. And Momo, they all lived in this big Victorian house in Kentucky. And Momo, she was in her 90s, and she was pretty healthy for 90s. Yeah. And Mimey ended up living into her mid to late 90s. I don't remember exactly the age, but Momo would sit in the parlor, as they called it. And I guess it's what it was, a parlor. I don't have a parlor in my house. And one day I asked, and she would kind of just sit there. She was, she was old. She didn't really talk much, and she was just kind of there. But we'd hang out with her. And I remember asking Mimey, why is her nose so red? Because, old people get their noses grow and they kind of get red, right? And I was like, why is her nose so red? And she said, because she's always sticking her nose in everyone's business. And I, as a 6-year-old or whatever, took that as gospel. I thought it was look, I'm 6 and I'm believing I'm believing everything I'm being told anyway. So, I wasn't told about Santa Claus, but I was told about a lot of stuff that I took quite literally. I think I told you before, I thought Jesus literally lived in my heart. Like I thought there was like a tiny Jesus in there. And maybe there is, but I took things very literally. Yeah. And so I just remember thinking, well, now I know why they have such a rule about, staying out of other people's beeswax. I don't want my nose to turn red like that.
I don't look like Ted Kennedy. What's happening?
Yeah. Ted Kennedy has had his nose in a lot of stuff. So anyway, the origin of it, what I loved is I had to tell this one is the story, the popular thing that you find online, the thing that's probably in this book, if I looked it up, is that back in the 18th and 19th centuries, women who suffered from disfiguring marks due to smallpox would use beeswax to smooth out their complexion. Okay. Okay, so again, this is going to this literal thing of minding your own beeswax.
Yeah.
So the theory is that if someone got too close or was staring at someone else's beeswax, the woman would say, "Mind your own beeswax." Beeswax has been used commonly in cosmetics for years,
Right.
but I mean, this is obviously bullcrap. And guess how it got spread? You'll
Was
never
it
guess.
the ant? The ant.
Somebody's
aunt, and I forgot her name. Gosh darn it! What was her name?
Aunt Kathy.
Aunt Kathy. Yes, it was
Yeah.
Aunt Kathy.
The ants started sending these around. So there was an email. We've talked before about life in, what was it, life in the 1800s or 1400s?
Yes.
No, it's life in the 1400s, and the first entry is about George Washington's day.
Right.
And everybody's forwarding this on. This tells you everything you need to know about idioms.
Mm-hmm.
No. It's a bunch of bunk. We need to do bunk on this show. I'd be curious where that came from. So it's fake. There was an email called Little History Lesson that some freaking domestic terrorist or somebody's aunt put out, because people putting these emails out, there's just, I don't like it. Not at all. So, they said that I wanted to. So bottom line is, it has nothing to do with that. It's just a softer way to say mind your business. Beeswax, business. They both start with B. That's all there is to it. It's been around forever. I just wanted to share some bonus facts that are in this article from today. I found out regarding beeswax. There was another popular beeswax theory that women in the 1800s would sit by the fireplace making beeswax candles. If they got too close, the wax would begin to melt. And it doesn't seem to be true. It's just something that people said. But they also said that if they got too close to the fire, the wax would start dripping off of their face, which, as the terrible email said, hence the phrase "to lose face." It all goes back to beeswax. Hey, not only that, when the women would put beeswax all over their face, it would dry. And then when they would go to smile, do you know what they would do?
Crack a smile?
They would crack a smile.
Oh,
yeah. I'm so glad that you're having this reaction as well.
It's too much. It's way too easy.
It's too much. Yeah, it's I mean, I think somewhere on here, I don't think I read it, but somewhere in this article, it did end with like, so they would literally crack a smile. It's like, okay, whenever you wrap up with that, we can just go ahead and discard everything we just read.
Yeah.
So I did want to talk about Mind Your Beeswax. I mainly want to talk about my dad. Did you use this Mind Your Beeswax, or is that something that was like strictly in my, well, obviously it wasn't strictly in my family, but
I think that was something that was used probably in my family. I've picked up a more updated one of, I use nacho. When someone will ask me something that's not their business, I'll say nacho, and they go, "What do you mean nacho?" And I'll say, "It's nacho business," which is sometimes funny and sometimes could get you beat up depending on when you have that discussion. I find that attorneys don't find it as interesting to use when you're interacting with them, especially if you've called them in the middle of the night. But that's more of a story for another time and another day. But I think Mind Your Beeswax is something I think everyone kind of knows. It's kind of like a little kid thing too. I could hear someone on the schoolyard saying that too.
Yes, yeah, it definitely is a thing the kids say, apparently, and my dad. Also, please don't say nacho to me, because that's insult to injury, because I'm immediately, now I just want nachos. And then you come back with a nacho business. So there's kind of a lesson in there. It's kind of punitive as well. It's like, wow, you told me, and now I want nachos. All right, well, I do have one more to get to, but I believe, Steve, that you have a new slang for us.
I do. I have a new slang, but I wanted to follow up on something you had said about your parents, that your family's value of staying out of people's business. And I have maybe some contradictory facts to that. So it starts with last night it's wintertime. In Richmond, Virginia, there's periodically some snow and cold weather. I mean, it's nothing like living up north, but it's enough to keep us inside that, on a day that maybe on a weekend day that we would be outside doing something, we wouldn't be. So I'm very blessed to have a wife who's a tremendous cook and baker, and my daughter is also. So my daughter gets bored and makes a wonderful, very rich chocolate cake. So this cake is presented to me around 8 o'clock last night. And we are going to show our age here, Scott. Tell me if you agree with me. So I'm at that point in my life that there's certain things I could do. I could have, a 6-pack of beers at 8 o'clock and be all right the next day. Mm-hmm. But if you give me cake past 8 o'clock, I become a gremlin, that I know that it's going to be a night of unrest and terror. I mean, frankly, I'd rather do acid at this point in my life than have chocolate cake at 8 o'clock. I'm probably gonna sleep better after that and have less hallucinations. But I knew it was gonna be a rough night, but completely worth it. So, ate the cake, probably ate too much, went to bed, and as predicted, a terrible night of sleeping, including very odd dreams that involved your mom and dad both separately giving me real estate advice. And different components of the dream. Your dad gave me some real estate advice, and then your mom did. And have you ever had a dream that becomes active, like you're kind of going back and forth between something?
Yes.
that happened also. So sometime this morning, my wife and I woke up like in different parts of the house. If someone would have come over, it looked like the Allman Brothers in 1972 had been here. I mean, we just both had a rough night.
Right.
And I shared with my wife the dream that I had, and she said, and this is the truth. She's like, I had a dream with Scott's dad in it also.
Whoa.
So, and it was nothing. It was I asked a couple other questions to make sure if Big Mike's been involved with us more than I realized that we're both dreaming about him when I haven't been around, and it's not. But that was something that was kind of strange that we both. I don't know if there was some like cosmic vibe that was put out there.
Well, that's wild. Well, for the listeners, my dad lives fairly close in the same neighborhood to Steve. So it's not that weird. It's not like you haven't seen my dad since you're in 9th grade or something. Right. But my dad's must be putting off some sort of weird like energy or something.
He is. Well, if you call him up tonight and if he's like vibrating and meditating in front of a chocolate cake, we might have some clues. But for now, I think I'm going to focus on this week's new slang. New slang when you notice the stripes. So normally when I do a new slang, I have a resource, Reader's Digest, Oprah's Magazine, Parentology.com, very hip and cutting edge publications are normally where I get things from. But actually I'm going to take one that my daughter uses often, and that is Big Oof.
Big oof.
Big oof. So my daughter uses this term generally when something bad or embarrassing happens. And I've heard her use it a few times. And the other night there was a discussion, and maybe even the same night we had the chocolate cake, of having her mother shave my back. And my wife's rightful look of disgust on her face resulted in my daughter going, big oof. So she uses this term when something bad or embarrassing happens, like her father discussing having his back shaved on a recorded podcast. So let's explore some more. Let's see if she's right, and let's see what we think about this new slang.
Well, hold on. First things first. How'd the back come out? Did we get to see for YouTube?
Not yet. We generally wait. I do more of an annual, like a pre-pool season kind of. Yeah. What you do when you shear a sheep, it's kind of the same thing. And we've learned you don't go totally to the skin. You just thin out what we call in the house the hair wings. Like I have like angel's wings on my back, except it looks like it's made out of a 60-year-old Italian man. So on to big oof. So first to word counter. What does the term oof mean? And quoting from the word counter. According to Lingaholic and Merriam-Webster, the word oof is an expression of discomfort, dismay, or surprise. This is an onomatopoeia that is meant to sound like the way we express pain when we experience a loss of air from the stomach. The term is frequently used on social media, and the term big oof, like other common slang terms such as yeet or TW, TW meaning trigger warning.
Oh, I thought maybe it meant like, that's wild.
Yeah. So it could also. Maybe there's another new slang for us to explore that. But I like that immediately Merriam-Webster is referenced. And they confirm that oof means to express discomfort, surprise, or dismay. So that's not a big surprise. I think we've seen oof like in a comic book, or maybe even said oof if someone punched you in the stomach or shamed you in front of their daughter concerning your disgusting body. But let's continue. The word counter also explains that while, mostly it's used as an onomatopoeia for when you expel air from your body, there's a couple other things, alternate meanings of oof. And I'm going to read several to you. And you tell me what you think, all right?
Okay. Yep, let's do it.
First one, out of frame. Pretty pedestrian, not very...
yeah, it's not locking in with me.
No.
That's so out of frame.
Yeah. Second, out of fiber.
I mean, it's definitely something that as old people we got to keep track of to make sure we don't go out of fiber. But I don't think your daughter would be saying big out of fiber.
Yeah.
So,
well, depending on how much hair she saw on my back, that might fit. Third one gets even more interesting. Obama organizing fellows.
Community organizing them?
Could be. And maybe, but again, something to bring up that we haven't brought up in a long time. Barack Obama doesn't get enough credit for being our country's first Hawaiian president. I just want to remind everyone of that. Yep. Big oof for not bringing that up. All right, Continuing. Oceans of Fun, which in parentheses we learn is a Kansas City water park.
Oh, y'all going to oof this weekend?
Yeah.
Is that how they talk in Kansas City? New York City, big oof. That was my best Kansas City.
I like that. Now, you wanted to have nachos earlier. I want to have salsa on my nachos now that you've said that.
Right. Those guys were probably from Texas, but Kansas City and Texas are pretty close, right?
Yeah. Well, speaking of somewhere far away from Kansas City and Texas, the last option comes from Sweden.
Ooh.
And it's Ulands Ortologiska Fjording.
I like it.
Yeah.
I like your Swedish.
I do. I have remember German,
I know.
Irish, a little Swedish, but mostly Belgian, Mongolian.
Right.
So none of these I think are acceptable as answers. So let's go to Urban Dictionary. So Urban Dictionary's first definition from Trashist in April of 2018. Whenever something didn't go your way, it's going to be almost impossible to fully recover from. So I'm
just tying this back to your daughter looking at your back hair.
Yeah.
She's never going to recover from that.
She probably won't. That's going to be tough. But at least when we take her to a therapist, we'll have something to kind of start her off with.
Well, my son can go too, because I famously, as a single man, I have to do my best with the tools that are out there. And I have more than just wings. I've got a full, thing back there. And there's just a couple spots that are really hard to get, even with the back shaver thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I asked Logan to come in and just finish off the spots for me. And he was like, I can't, man. I got to draw the line somewhere.
Yeah.
I was like, you know what? I was like, you're right. That's on me. I shouldn't have asked you that. People will just have to live with the spot. So big oof indeed.
And that leads me, I think that's a very good segue to number 2 definition from Urban Dictionary from 2019 by Yeetus Fetus Deletus. Something so cringe or sad that leaves you speechless, so you say big oof. And the example they give is, whoa, did you see Miguel's popularity fall? Big oof.
Boy, they've really just captured the language of the kids. Did you see Armando's popularity fall, or whatever his name was?
But I did like Miguel's. That was good too.
Yeah.
It had hashtag diversity as a fellow POC, Belgian Mongolian.
Yeah.
I'm glad to see that happen.
Me too. Representation.
So we haven't represented any video games so far in this episode, but we are right now. So you might be wondering, where did Big Oof come from? And we're pretty sure it came from a video game called Roblox. Are you familiar with this video game?
I am very familiar with this video game. My daughter is big Roblox fan. So she gets Robux for her birthday and things like that. So, yeah, I'm very familiar.
Well, good. Well, maybe.
But I didn't know that was the origin of our new slang.
Yeah, but you know now. So let me give you a little bit more information from knowyourmeme.com. The oof sound, derived from the sound played upon the death of a Roblox avatar, was started back in 2006 when Roblox launched. However, users of Roblox have taken to saying the oof sound in person when they have also defeated another player in game. This way of saying oof was first started by the user 2Nightmare in February 2016 while playing The Streets. So there's potential for me to have another big oof as I look at all these words here and not really sure what they mean. I think it might be better if I went back to those Swedish words and tried to say those again.
Yeah, so, I tried to pretend like I didn't say anything, but I have no idea what you're talking about. I do know what Roblox is, but if the streets are like in Roblox, then this just goes to show how little I actually monitor what my kids do.
Yeah. Well, big oof for you then.
Big oof for me, yeah.
So, Scott, if you'd like, I believe I have found the sound of the oof.
Yeah, let's do it. Roll that beautiful oof footage right now. Is that what your daughter sounded like?
No, that sounded like me when I finally did get my back hair shaved.
I want to hear it again. Okay, hold on.
Sure.
That's pretty good. Yeah. I like it. I'm a fan.
And I found earlier today while researching this, without headphones on, that sound provoked a big reaction out of Mindy the Dog. Might have reminded her of one of her fights in prison, as we got some more information on that earlier. So, big oof looks like it comes from Roblox. And this is the time in new slang when we talk about what do we think of this, Scott? I'll let you go first.
I love it. I love it. Because it's, even without knowing what it stands for, even, and it doesn't stand for anything, right? That's pretty much, it's just the sound. So,
yeah.
It's, you know what it means, you know what's going on. And my kids have said it to me as well. And they were right to do so. So I'll give this one an enthusiastic thumbs up.
I'll give it an enthusiastic thumbs up too. I think as we can both connect it to our daughters, who are awesome.
Yeah.
And
rightfully so.
Yeah. And rightfully we haven't made shave our backs yet.
Yeah.
So, and that's new slang.
I like that one. So before I get to my last idiom, I want to share a big oof of my own.
Please.
Well, it's not even me. It's an oof that I big oofed it after the fact because I don't know if I've told you this, but I find stuff like this really funny. Mm-hmm. And I feel like I told the story before and people were nonplussed, but let me go ahead and share it now.
Sure.
So we've already been talking about somehow how my dad's been permeating your guys' dreams. Mm-hmm. He wants everybody to mind his own everybody's own beeswax. Well, my stepmother, mm-hmm. Sandy, who's obviously married to my dad, her mom had a big oof situation. They were telling me this story about how, I guess when she first started texting, mm-hmm. and listen, I'm a bad texter, and I'm 43. I mean, her mom's like, I don't know, in her 70s. Mm-hmm. She's not going to be a great texter.
Right.
Okay. And that can take many forms, but they noticed that she kept responding to things that they were saying. So like, how we were trying to figure out what OOF stood for.
Right.
And a lot of times, well, I think a common one, a lot of times people think LOL means lots of love. Mm-hmm. I even remember when LOL first came out, again, as being very old, I remember LOL and not knowing what that meant, thinking, does that mean like it's a sign off, like lots of love, like X's and O's? And then I figured out, whatever. So my dad showed me this text because I guess he had texted the mom saying, hey, we got the girls, they're going to be coming to Charlottesville tomorrow and looking forward to the trip. And her response back was WTF with a big exclamation point. And apparently it wasn't the first time that she had been responding with WTF mm-hmm. to inappropriate ways. Mm-hmm. And they said, "What do you think that means?" And she said, "Well, that's fantastic."
That is
So
awesome.
Okay, so and I'm thinking the best part for me in the comedy there is I want to believe, and I do believe in my heart, that she used that with a lot of people. It wasn't just my dad. Like I need her to have used that just with people she doesn't know that well.
Yeah.
You know, like her vet or something. Hey, everything looks good with the dog, WTF, and they don't know how to respond. So I believe they then shared it with her, although they shouldn't have if they did.
No.
But
and I'd love to find out if
motive.
she actually knew what it meant the whole time. It was just messing with everybody too.
That's another angle.
Yeah.
That's a great angle. I'm gonna do stuff like that when I'm old. Actually, no, I'm probably just gonna be scared and confused. Okay, last one. This last one was submitted by a listener, Don. Had one that he thought we should do, and I thought this was a perfect time to do it, which is at 6s and 7s.
At 6s and 7s.
Yeah, and I think that's one that was like floating around somewhere in my head. Like I knew, I kind of have read it or knew about it, but never used it. And he said, and I didn't realize this until I was just thinking about it, that it has a similarity with my P's and Q's. He said that his soccer coach used to say, "Hey, it's all 6s and 7s out here. Let's go. Let's tighten up," you know. And so similar to my football coach yelling that we got to be on our P's and Q's. So something about coaches, they need to have some creative way to yell at you.
Yeah.
And certainly profanity is generally in there, but
yeah,
yelling about 6s and 7s, I thought was pretty good. What's your relationship, if any, with this one?
I don't think I've heard that maybe used instead of P's and Q's, but very rarely. And when I've heard it, I think it's been used like almost accidentally, like when someone has put it in the wrong spot that they meant to with that. But again, my exposure to coaching is quite limited based on my rightfully or appropriately limited athletic expertise and skill.
Well, let me just say this, because I just sit here while you're very self-deprecating about sports, but you're an awesome coach. I've seen you in action with the softball team, and you started the whole crab move for the team. You do a great job.
Well, thank you for that. I appreciate that.
So at 6s and 7s means, according to, who was this? Oxford Languages, which is basically the thing that pops up when you first Google. It means in a state of total confusion or disarray. So if you want to not be at 6s and 7s, you need to be on your P's and Q's. So this is one that we do have a good origin for, but let me tell you what some of the ones that are wrong have been put out there are the apocryphal ones. And the first one is, I like this one, but it's from the Bible. So in the King James Version of the Bible, Job 5:19 says, quote, "He shall deliver thee in 6 troubles, yea, in 7 shall no evil touch thee," which I don't know what that quite means. And it isn't linked at all to the expression, and I actually was reading Proverbs the other day, and one of my favorite parts of Proverbs is when the author is going through making the proclamations, and he always takes it up a notch. He's like, there are 5 things the Lord hates. No, 6. like right before he's about to tell the 5 things, he remembered the 6th one. He's like, oh, and also obey your parents. Let's just throw that one into all of them.
Yep.
So that's a device. That's a writing device that's used in the Bible, where sometimes they'll just ratchet it up at last second. And by the way, I want to use that technique also if I'm ever in like an argument and yelling, because we have the established, first of all, nobody likes you. You already got them. They're staggered with that. And then you say, and there's 5 things you no 6 things you suck at. So I'll just take this.
The nay
and use it
is
for
what
bad.
you need too. That's the mustard that puts the flavor in it.
You nailed it. You're right. It wasn't working with that. You got to throw the nay in there. This one said yay though, not nay. So there is a more popular theory which is that there were rival livery companies in London, which I had to look up what is a livery company. I mean, I know what livery is, right? Livery's like a sort of a uniform you'd wear. If you're on the same team, like drivers for NASCAR, they have livery on their cars and their clothing. And then, of course, back in the proverbial day, we had the livery this is what this group or this king and his court wear. So they had these livery companies, and the reason they were called that was because they were trading guilds, okay? And if you were wearing the livery, you were part of the guild. So this comes out of way long ago, back in the late 1200s, these things started to form. And so you would know it'd be like this guy's walking around. You know what a UPS driver looks like because of what he's wearing. And that was that way then. Oh, this guy is in ye old, haberdashery, guild because he's wearing whatever. So the way that it would work back then, and I won't get into the nitty gritty of the dispute because it's boring and I don't know exactly what it is, but there were these two guilds, these two livery companies. One of them was a guild of fur traders. The other one was a guild of tailors. And they had a dispute about who should be the precedents of their guild in order. And I really don't even know exactly what that means, but there was some sort of precedence that was put out in the community, and it gave them more stature or whatever to be higher on the list. And there was some dispute about the numbers or some reason why they couldn't figure out who was supposed to be higher. So the mayor at the time, which was Mayor Sir Robert Bilsden, settled the dispute, ruling that the two companies should alternate between the 6th and 7th positions in successive years, which was a ruling it says, according to Worldwide Words, is still in force. And this happened in 1484.
Wow.
Yeah, right? So as Michael Quinion in Worldwide Words says, he goes, you would think that this would settle the matter. What could be clearer? Two companies were permanently at 6s and 7s with each other. Only problem here is the phrase is found 100 years earlier in Chaucer's Troilus and Cresside, which is dated in 1375. And it said, to quote, to set the world on 6 and 7. So here's what Michael Quinion thinks, and I think he's right here, that this came from an old dice game called Hazard. And it was apparently like a really risky game. I don't really know. They said it's kind of like, I guess, craps is today, but I'll tell you, I've never played craps. I don't really know. I like the idea of like squatting down with some dice and throwing them against the wall. But
you live very close to a 7-Eleven, so I mean, you could make this dream a reality quite easily.
You're right. And I've probably seen craps in more ways than one by that 7-Eleven. Yeah. So anyway, but according to Michael Quinion, the game Hazard has confusing and arbitrary and complicated rules. And it was probably the people running the games are, I'm sure, crooks and everything. So it was a risky thing. And the saying 6s and 7s, well, first of all, you can't roll obviously a 7 with a single die. It started as I don't know if I'm going to be able to say this, the French words for 5 and 6. So it's like oh gosh, I had it written down somewhere. Cease, I think, is 6, and then like, doggone it, where'd it go? Well, anyway, I can't say I'm right anyway, but it was initially 5 and 6, but they changed it to 6 and 7. Some people think that because those add up to 13 and it meant, something risky and unlucky. But this spread really fast. So it showed up in the English language as things are at 6s and 7s. And it's been around since Chaucer's day just to mean disorganized. And it appears to come from the game. And another interesting link to this game Hazard is that the English word hazard actually comes from this card game. So something's old when it's not like, Hasbro just came out with the new game, right? Hazard. It's like, no, the word hazard came from this game. And the way that worked was the old French hazard with an S in the middle, hazard, I guess. And then the Spanish azar, which came from the Arabic azar, which means luck or chance, which is also based on an Arabic or Turkish word for dice. And then only later in the English language did it start to mean danger or risk. And of course, we got a game called Risk also.
Yeah.
So to venture something, basically the idea here is if you are dumb enough to bet on 6s and 7s, which really were 5s and 6s, you must be confused in the head because you're going to lose all of your money, basically, is where this came from. This idea of things being at 6s and 7s was you must be nuts to think that you're going to be able to succeed, and you must be disorganized, or not disorganized, but just confused, I think is the better word. So that would be a big oof to bet that. So there you go. So I think just to recap, we did P's and Q's, which comes from the alphabet. Mind your beeswax, which just means mind your business, has nothing to do with beeswax being on a face. So if you hear that from someone, kick them in the nuts for me.
Yeah.
You have my permission. And then being on your P's and Q's, or excuse me, being everything at 6s and 7s, meaning disorganized, confused, not in good shape. And then the big oof, which we both gave a thumbs up.
Enthusiastic thumbs up. Not just
That's
any
right.
thumbs up with that.
That's right. So that's it. You want to take us home,
I'll
Steve?
take us home. So thank you very much for listening to Origin of Speacies. If you enjoyed the show, please help us spread the word by liking and subscribing on YouTube, leaving a positive review and 5-star rating on Apple Podcast. And if you really, really like the show, become a Species Supporter at patreon.com/Speacies. Any amount of support provides you access to great bonus content, including our exclusive podcast, 3 Silly Questions, where we ask any of our special guests, you guess it, 3 silly questions. Scott, I was going to say, our most recent one we did was Stacey at Patwell. Might be my favorite one that we've done.
Yeah, it's good.
And
they're all good. I love them.
And what I liked about it is the second question we always ask is so poorly received that I was going to actually yank it, and you encouraged me to keep it because it's so bad.
Yeah, it's you gotta keep it. Yeah. I could see in your eyes that you were like, this is the last time we do this one. The reason I like it, and this, you guys, we're not going to give away what it is. You gotta be a Species Supporter. It always confuses people, and it makes a little bit of awkwardness, but it needs to stay. And then the third question always gets a good response, and I will say that her response to this one was surprising, because I think of all the people you've asked this question to, she would be the one that could actually follow through and do something. So I was saying all this to tease you to go listen to 3 Silly Questions, because it's awesome.
And to do so, go to patreon.com/Speacies. That's patreon.com/Speacies.
All right, Bob's your uncle.
Watch out for bears, and kale is from the devil.
Speacies.